Brazilian police say they've regained control of the Congress building in the capital, Brasilia, after it was stormed by thousands of supporters of the right-wing former president Jair Bolsonaro. The demonstrators are refusing to accept that he lost last year's election and want the military to intervene. Well, the man who defeated him, the left-wing veteran Lula de Silva, visited the site of some of the rioting, and he's described the protesters as fascist vandals, warning they'd face the full force of the law. Our South America correspondent Katie Watson sent this report from Brazil, and a warning: there is some flash photography.
Total chaos in Brasilia as thousands of hardline protesters invaded government buildings, authorities responding with tear gas to try and regain control of Brazil's capital. This was a scenario many here feared might happen after a divisive election back in October. These images are clearly reminiscent of what happened in the US Capitol 2 years ago. After all, former President Jair Bolsonaro is nicknamed the Trump of the tropics by some. But while far-right protesters here have been emboldened by the former US president, this was more than just a copycat insurrection, and it goes beyond Bolsonaro too. What angers protesters most is not so much that Bolsonaro lost, but the fact that Lula won, a man they see as belonging in prison, not the presidential palace.
I'm here in this totally peaceful demonstration because I don't agree with all the thievery of Lula, the vice president, the Supreme Court and the Superior Electoral Court. We want new elections, clean ballot boxes.
We don't believe that this election was democratic. There are several indications that there was fraud, that there was corruption.
There's been no evidence of fraud, despite what these protesters claim, but no matter. What these people want is military intervention. It's the only way, in their view, that Brazil can be saved from what they see as a stolen election. Lula, though, the elected president, who's been in the job for just a week, condemned what happened, calling the protesters fanatical fascists.
All those people who did this will be found and punished. They will realise that democracy guarantees the right to freedom and free speech, but it also demands that people respect the institutions created to strengthen democracy.
By nightfall, people had been cleared from the buildings and police were clearing the remaining protesters from the streets. At best, authorities were caught out unprepared. At worst, they're suspected of being involved.
Just really didn't seem to be a police presence of a capital that, potentially expected something like this to happen. We saw hardly any law enforcement on the street. The police barricades were easily overthrown by these Bolsonaro supporters. And, it's just a bit of a mess just now in the capital.
The Supreme Court has been asked to issue an arrest warrant for the man in charge of Brasilia's security, a former minister under Jair Bolsonaro, who was dismissed after Sunday's events. The calm may have been restored for now, but the political division remains. Katie Watson, BBC News in Sao Paulo.
Well, Mr. Bolsonaro has been tweeting about the events in Brasilia. In one of his tweets, he said, peaceful, lawful demonstrations are part of democracy. However, pillaging and invasions of public buildings has occurred today, such as those practiced by the left in 2013 and 2017. They are outside the law. A little earlier, we asked Leo Puglia, who's a history and sociology teacher in Rio de Janeiro, for his take on the protests in Brasilia.
Most of these more radical Bolsonaro supporters, they believe that Lula is a communist and he will install a communist dictatorship. And it happens because, very similar to what happened in the United States, these people are more disconnected of reality because they don't believe in corporate media and they just get information through WhatsApp and social media made by Bolsonaro supporters and congressmen, and they believe that Lula should not take place, and they are try to set Brazil free from communism. And people here, actually, everything happened too fast, and the first reaction, in one hand, we are very sad for what happened, the destruction of our capital city. We are not surprised, on the other hand, because Bolsonaro supporters, they told that they would do so. They are big fans. Bolsonaro is a big fan of Donald Trump and his supporters as well. And they promised to make an attack similar to what happened in the Capitol in the United States. And what surprised us is that the federal district, police did not do its job. That's the problem. We hoped that they would protect the city from this attack, and it did not happen. We had 1 week ago Lula's inauguration in Brasilia. I was there, and people were scared because 1 week before Lula's inauguration, we had an attempt of terrorist attack in Brasilia. A guy put a bomb in a gas truck that would explode Brasilia airport. Hopefully it failed. And we were really scared about this, but the inauguration went fine, and the Bolsonaro supporters promised to take over Brasilia today, do attack like what happened in the United States, but we expect the police to do its job, and it didn't. They just let the protests did what they did. They just destroyed the buildings in Brasilia. Since Lula won the election, the most radical Bolsonaro supporters, they start to camp in front of military headquarters all over Brazil. It happened all over the country, and they are everywhere. They are in front of military headquarters, begging for a military dictatorship. That's their hope, and it's what Bolsonaro promised them. But he didn't deliver, and he's running away to U.S. Afraid of being arrested in Brazil for his crimes.